It's very nice to be here. God, what are we saying? About 200 people here? This is brilliant. And now, I'm doing a wee test every time I speak at these events, and it's a bit of a truth test, not just for me, but for us all collectively, because I don't mind preaching to the converted. I don't even mind preaching to the converters. But it would be nice at this stage of the game just to find out how many people in the hall are feeling a certain way. So, hands up if you're a yes supporter. Hands up if you're an undecided or don't know. Welcome, welcome, welcome to you all. Also, just have a sense of just right now, here right now, what we're all doing. You're all in a room listening to random people talk about a big abstract topic called independence. You're not in front of the television, you're not self-developing, you're not doing anything other than being here in a hall thinking about issues of power, economy, identity, progress, regress. This is good news. No matter, in a sense, I don't quite believe no matter what the result on September the 18th, because I'm implacably for yes. But in any sense, I hope that Scotland doesn't go back to sleep, because Scotland is awake, and it's awake from north to south, east to west, and it's not just awake in terms of people filling halls like this. We've also managed to get our information out, as Andy has said, through social media. We've not just bemoaned the media, we've become the media. And I think if you looked down at this from a great height, or if you look back at this from a couple of years, lots of things to be proud of in the basic process. Not a drop of blood has been shed, maybe a few tears have been shed. I would like a few pounds to be shed as well, but it doesn't seem to be happening to me on the campaign trail. But it's a peaceful, rational, very Scottish, very enlightenment, very educational, very pedagogical, whatever word you want to do. It's a very Scottish moment of flourishing. I think we should be dead proud of that, particularly if you compare it to, say, what's happening in Catalonia, who I think have at least as good a claim to independence as Scotland, but the Spanish government are saying that we're not even giving you a legal referendum. Let's give that to the Cameron Junta just for a moment. They've allowed this to be not just an orderly process, but a legal and binding process. And compared to what happened in 1979, 50% plus 0.1 wins a yes. Now, Andy actually just took away the first half of my presentation, which was equally stuffed with facts, so I won't go there. But I mean, in a sense, I'm a terrible advocate for independence, because I've bought it at least since 1988, when I was campaigning for Jim Sillars with the Proclaimers in Govan, and also campaigning with them again when they lost in 1992. And the reason why Jim in particular convinced me of the merits of independence was because of a book that he wrote called Scotland, A Case for Optimism, good word, and also an idea that he had called Independence in Europe. And I mean, I was a young Labour guy from Coatbridge, hot to trot, student Marxist. I was having none of this narrow nationalist nonsense. But Jim gave me a perspective that to be for Scotland and to be confident about Scotland was also about engaging with the wider world and being ambitious for your country, not just for the state of the country within itself, in terms of the balance between rich and poor, not just in terms of how you would exploit the resources and the natural wealth of the country properly, but also for the story that you could tell in the wider world. And I would have said another thing that piqued me into independence was I spent a bit of time with a person you probably know, Jo McAlpin, MSP, the mother of my children and my ex, but we first fetched up in the early years of our marriage in Greenock, actually in Gourock. Beautiful place, then you know it. But you go up to the hill at the back of Gourock and you look over the beautiful Firth of Clyde, and then suddenly this black sliver comes from stage right, and it is a Trident nuclear submarine gracefully cutting its way through the glass-like waters on its way to its final destination. And that was something I thought, this is a classic scene. This is everything that you love about Scotland, everything that's beautiful about Scotland, everything that's douce and orderly and decent about Scotland, and there is this foul, wasteful, pointless atrocity moving through the waters. So I think at the core, I'm kind of post all parties at the moment. I mean, I was in the SNP. I would say I'm sort of somewhere between the Labour Party and the Green Party at the moment, actually, in my politics. But if there's one red line that I think is important in all this, and ties back to my inspiration for independence, which is not just how good Scotland can be, but what good can Scotland do for the world. It's Trident is the key, cancelling Trident is the key. If you have the powers of independence to do anything, not only in terms of the billions of pounds that it returns to an independent Scottish exchequer, but for the message it sends to the wider world. How do we want to project power as an independent Scotland? Do we want to project power in a way that makes us attractive in a global context, or do we want to not do that? And I think getting rid of Trident, in my opinion, is a beautiful thing to do with independence. And believe me, there are a lot of people, a lot of people who don't want it to happen. And so just realise the power that you have, all of you, whether you're for independence or against it, turning up to this room and realising the things that we're about to decide on September the 18th. One could not say that you were not standing on the planet at this moment in space and time and were not a political adult and were not a citizen and did not have power in your hands. You will be able to say that on September the 18th. You will have had real power in your hands. Whether you decide to use it or lose it is up to you and up to your friends and family that I hope you're constantly convincing. But you will have real power. It's very rare, I think, in anybody's life. A lot of people fight for power, a lot of people struggle for power, a lot of people get power and misuse it. But we have, and I'll use this word again, we have a beautiful opportunity to demonstrate to the world how good governance can be, how good a government it can be. I mean, we're not just lucky. I mean, it's actually absurd how lucky we are. When we shut down Trident, one of the consequences of Trident being on the west coast is that there are vast oil reserves in the waters between Scotland and Ireland that have not been explored because of the security considerations for Trident. I mean, not only do we have the 25%, 10%, 50% of Europe's entire renewable resources, but we also have another oil boom when we get rid of a nuclear. I mean, you couldn't make that up. If you wanted to try and create Scottish independence fairy tales, all you need to do is look at the facts. So when we go to the booth, we're actually facing a sort of a bit of an embarrassment of riches. And I wrote a column for the Scotsman, which didn't make me many friends amongst my comrades, but I just wanted to draw people's attention to the consequences of a no vote. I mean, and I'll finish on this, I'm the most optimistic guy in the world about independence, and I have been for many years. But I think it is time to start to talk about the consequences of a no vote. What we'll show to the world if we vote no on September the 18th is that the country with the best possible conditions for its independence said, nah, not up for it, can't do it, don't really want the fuss or the trouble. And when people talk about this sort of the negative consequence, people ask, it's a good question you get asked in the media, what's the negative consequence? It must be some negative consequence of a yes vote. And what I'm sort of driven to ask is, yes, it will be demanding. It will be about us turning up as citizens. Now, I think we're already turning up as citizens. We're filling halls like this, we're reading opinion editorials, we're searching out information, we're comparing different sources and facts. We're already raising our game as a citizenry to be ready for something. But I wouldn't deny to anybody that the early years of independence are going to be demanding. They're going to require us to pay attention to levels of detail, to keep an eye on politicians, to keep turning out to meetings like this, if we're putting together constitutions, or we want to press for certain kinds of change, or policy, we want to change the media, we want to change the way that we do welfare. You'll have to stay awake, and you'll have to stay alive, and be ready and up for it. So, what's the negative of independence? A yes vote. It will be demanding. I think that's a good thing. But the consequence of a no vote, I think, will be a profound disempowerment. I think even the people who vote no, who want to vote no, I think down the line that will eat away at them. I think they will realise the chance that they lost, and I fear a no vote. I actively fear it. I think, and one of the reasons why I fear it in the long term is I think there's a general drift away from the powers of the nation state. I think it's just the truth. And independence in 2014 is not an independence that would have been, say, 30, 40 years ago. It's an independence that's about an interdependence. You assert your sovereignty and then you figure out how that sovereignty works with the wider world. And I think Scotland has a last chance to get the powers of the nation state such that they can decide how they go through the world. I don't think it'll come round again. I think it's now or never. I feel that, and I want to convey that feeling to people. And finally, I do want to dwell a wee bit on the negative. Just the last point I want to make is the sense that the better together case, which is basically that you get the best of both worlds. I think we need to address this head on. Best of both worlds meaning that you control what you need to control in Scotland, but when things get too tough or too shaky or too rough or too risky, then you have the broad shoulders of the UK to get you out of trouble. Now, I just did a little bit of history when I was actually thinking about the four most sort of destabilising political acts in my lifetime as an adult, 50 years old, I would say the last 25, 30 years. First, under Thatcherism, absolute assault on manufacturing industry during the 80s and the 90s, at a time when Europe was actually building up its manufacturing industry, when unions were working with management to build up industries. We were in a class war, essentially totally destructive, generated by Westminster parties. Second, generated by Westminster parties, but this one being Labour, would be the illegal Iraq War, which not only was illegal, wasteful, but dragged Scotland into a global context where we were associated with something that actually, in terms of radicalising and enraging Middle Eastern populations, directly threatens our security. Witness our friend from Aberdeen in the news stories the other day. Same regime, another destabilising act, the financial crash. Now, yes, the financial crash was triggered in America, but you could have no more enthusiastic advocates for the deregulation and empowerment of bankers that whole system was founded on than Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling. So when the whirlwind came, we had no resilience, we were extremely vulnerable with panic measures, and we now have a coalition, and now the final act is a coalition of Westminster government. Again, we're just circulating between different variations of Westminsterism. And the response to the crash is a huge public debt with £25 billion worth of welfare cuts to come inevitably in the next couple of years, and signed up to by a Labour Party for the first 4 years of their election from May 2015. Now, that's just look at that. Are those broad supportive shoulders? Is that the security that we crave? I think there's at least an argument to be made for our tie to Westminster being a source of insecurity and instability for living in Scotland. And I think we have to think about it. We have to find a way to, in the midst of our optimism, in the midst of our positivity, make the case that I think history bears out. Last point, very final point, and as will be enough point, just to repeat, as we always say at the top of these tables, this is not a vote for Alex Salmond, this is not a vote for the SNP, this is not a vote for Nicola Sturgeon. This is a vote for your country to decide the shape and future of your country. Now, I don't know what anybody's political accent or particular flavour is in this room, but I would call myself a democratic socialist. And I would like to vote for a Democratic Socialist Party in the first general election of the Scottish Independent Parliament. I don't know what it would be called. It could be called the Commonweal Party, could be called the Labour Party, could be called the Rainbow Alliance, who knows? But that's what I want. I want to vote for people who support a system that makes sure that the majority of people, working people in a society, get the benefits of a society that their work demands. And I want to be able to vote for a party in Scotland that has the power to make that come about. So, and you all may have your own different perspectives, but I think one of the beautiful things, and one of the beautiful things about independence, and one of the continuous things about independence is, that comes forward from the whole history of the Scottish Parliament. Again, I thought it was a lovely moment. the SNP go into their election victory in 2011, and they are defending policies that the previous parties had put together, whether it was free tuition fees or free personal care. They were actually defending policies that previous Labour and Liberal Democrat administrations had put into practice. Quite an irony, but actually I think an indication of the great consensus that awaits us on the other side of a yes vote. I don't think you could look at a society that agreed fundamentally on the balance between social justice and economic dynamism. I don't think you could find a country that has a better, more aware sense of the right balance between these two factors than Scotland in 2014. So I think that whole idea that we will come together after the vote, sure, I'm sure we'll come together if it's no vote. But what a unity, and what a sense of purpose, and what a sense of progress there will be right across political divisions post a yes vote. I think it will be the most exciting time that any of you have had as citizens or voters in your life. So to quote my great mentor, Jim Sellers, between the hours of 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock, September the 18th, you have the power of Scotland in your hands. Are you going to go forward with it, or are you going to let it go? Ask yourself that question in the bathroom mirror on that morning and see what answer you get. Thank you very much.